Welcome back. The House of Representatives Committee probing the arbitrary increase in the price of cement earlier this week threatened to arrest the management of Dangote Cement if it fails to appear at its next hearing. Now, some of the country's cement manufacturers have failed to honor invitations from the Joint Committee probing arbitrary increase in the price of cement.
Now, meanwhile, President of the Dangote Group Industries Ltd, Alhaji Aliko Dangote, while giving a keynote address, criticized the economic policies of the CBN, stating that no economic growth will occur as employment opportunities will decline following the new 30% interest rate. This has led economic experts to juxtapose the sudden inflation of cement prices, just like every other inflated commodity prices, to the recent policies affecting the economy. Joining us to look at this now, at how Africa's richest man, Aliko Dangote, has lent his voice similar to the sound of the masses, and how the hardship is crippling progress, is Public Affairs Analyst Ayo Adio. Ayo, welcome. I know you're a friend of the family. You're meeting me for the first time.
I was a bit worried when I saw that Dangote too was complaining. If they say Dangote wasted, they find money can complain. Who are the, what is the fate of the masses?
Serious issues.
Serious issues. So let's look at the current cost of cement in Nigeria. So Dangote Cement's price is about 10,000 naira to about 14,000 naira per bag. You have Lafarge Africa PLC running at about 12,000 to 14,000 naira per bag. Boa Cement about 10,000 to 11,000 naira per bag. And in late 2023, cement was sold between 3,500 to 5,000 naira per bag. So when you look at the inflation of what the price per bag was last year to now, and you see how it is basically, what is that? I'm not good at math. I can only count money. So somebody will help me out.
The rise is astronomical.
It's impossible to reckon with.
I think that we're playing the ostrich here. And not just we, I think the National Assembly is playing the ostrich, right? Food inflation is at 40%. Headline inflation is well over 30%, highest since 1996. So you have a high inflationary environment where the cost of every single commodity, household item has hit the roof. If you're buying an egg that used to cost about 50 or 60 naira a year or two ago, is now close to 200 naira. And a loaf of bread has tripled in price. You have a lot of bakeries that are now shutting their offices. So to imagine or to assume that in this high inflationary environment, energy costs that are hiking, infrastructure has not been pretty decent, and you expect the cost of cement to remain on the floor, I think it's a bit of wishful thinking. The cost of production is unbelievably high in Nigeria, and it makes it difficult for manufacturers to survive. And the fact that his name is Dangote doesn't make him immune from some of these challenges that many manufacturers are grappling. And just a bit of data, if you looked at the reports from the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria some 3 months ago, they claim that over 700 small manufacturing businesses have shut down, and largely because of a difficult environment to do business. You know as well that over 13 multinationals have had to shut offices and leave the country, all of them pointing fingers to how difficult it is to do business in Nigeria. So it's impossible to have inflation at over 30%, to have high energy costs. I'm not sure what you're going to be producing and be profitable if you're buying diesel at over 1,000 naira per diesel. That's why you see so many hospitality businesses are going under. There's a huge and a major hospitality business somewhere in Victoria Island as we speak today that posted a loss of over 10 billion yesterday. So it's almost impossible to imagine that people are going to do business in this kind of environment and be profitable without having to deal with higher costs, and takes a bit of their magics at the end of the day. So for me, I think the debate, especially from the National Assembly, has to move away from summoning Dangote and other cement manufacturers to have a shouting match about why the price of cement is going up, or to bully. The last time it was, I think it was MultiChoice that they were bullying while they were trying to review prices. The debate has to move from those reductionist conversations into using their tools as legislators to stimulate this economy and gear it towards productivity, growth, and to create jobs for the economy.
And the reductionist conversations will be very welcome if they're looking at, the administration, the government itself, being
Cutting
able to
their own
lead by
salaries,
example. Exactly.
yes.
We're not seeing them reducing the cost of governance. Rather, it's getting larger.
So the point, it's not even about, I mean, that's also an elephant in the room, reducing the cost of governance. But Nigerian legislators do not seem to understand the tools that they have in their disposal. And I give you a typical example. When Biden came into office, America was just recovering from COVID. Inflation was record high because of the crisis in Ukraine and Russia. What did they do? They passed 3 landmark legislation, the Infrastructure Bill, the Chips and Science Act, and of course they passed the Inflation Reduction Act. And what did these 3 things? They put 2 trillion into the economy. And what did that money do? They put 400 billion into the production of renewable energies for countries who wanted to manufacture semiconductors, and all of that. They gave tax credits to manufacturing companies to relocate from everywhere they were doing business in the world back to the United States of America. And those bills have produced 13 million jobs in 3 years.
And brought down inflation.
And has brought down inflation.
Figures.
So you have legislative tools that you can use to deal with the challenges that we're facing. But it seems to me like our National Assembly are just good at giving motions every other market day and not seem to realize the tools that they have in their disposal.
Is it that they're unaware or they're intentionally not exploring options?
I also wonder, is it a case of a distraction? They want to be seen to be working. Dangote is a very high figure for you to call and say, come and sit down before us and explain yourself.
To be honest, I don't have a problem with you summoning Dangote to explain whatever you want. I mean, it's the National Assembly. You have the powers to summon whoever in the country to appear before you. I think my grouse is, you haven't done your jobs. I'd like you to tell me one single bill that the National Assembly has passed in support of manufacturing in Nigeria. Just one single bill. I cannot emphasize the challenges that businesses are grappling with. And not a single legislative tool has been used to cushion the effect of these challenges on businesses across the country. So you cannot just sit down in your seats, earning large sitting allowances, wardrobe allowances, and all of that,
allowances,
buying brand new SUVs, and then you are summoning people left, right, and center when you haven't done the job of trying to nudge the economy in the right direction. And again, I think people just assume that our bills, when we pass bills in the country, it's time for largesse. People want to get contracts and things like that. And that's perhaps where we are as a country. Because your bills or your budgets are supposed to be targeted instruments at stimulating the growth and solving problems in your economy.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, if you looked at our budget, it's full of white elephant projects, misplaced priorities, contracts that are overinflated, and it's absolutely not targeted at driving productivity and growth. Now, until they do their jobs, you can't continue to haggle or hassle or harass Nigerians who are crumbling under this weight of the macroeconomic fundamentals that are crumbling many businesses in Nigeria.
So I need to ask, because this is not the first time the National Assembly, be it whatever chamber, will ask somebody and invite them to come and sit before them. And I want to ask this in terms of the respect that people even have for the National Assembly. Dangote is not the only person who's been invited. They've asked other large cement maker representatives to come. They're now saying that they might issue arrest warrants if he doesn't show. People don't show up. Ministers don't show up.
Yeah.
What do you think that says, in fact, about how we hold this particular chamber in esteem? Regardless of the individuals who come in every time there's election, we seem to have lost all due respect for this part.
It's sad because, I'm not one to defend you evading summons of the National Assembly, but it tells you that they have lost their reckoning. They're supposed to be the chamber of justice. They're supposed to represent the Nigerian people. But unfortunately, it seems that there is a huge gap between their realities and the realities of the average Nigerian. And perhaps that explains why they are not accorded the kind of respect that they should be accorded. And that hurts me because I'd like to see a National Assembly that exudes that kind of respect, that once it issues summons, people are scrambling to appear before many of these committees. But unfortunately, because they are not doing their jobs, because many of them are asleep at the switch. They just simply do whatever, they are told. It just hurts me that they just don't recognize the tools at their disposal to nudge our economy in the direction that, it should go. And so everybody in the country have suddenly left the job of fixing our macroeconomic fundamentals with the CBN governor, Cardoso. Unfortunately, as a CBN governor, you have very limited tools to deal with the issues that we're grappling. And unfortunately, his focus now, obviously, is to stop hot capital from leaving Nigeria.
Right.
And that's why he has continued to keep interest rates high, because the people on the fiscal side, to put it mildly, have been asleep on the switch.
Okay, we'll talk about how the role the citizens have to play in holding our lawmakers to account, but I want to paint a picture of what the reality of this is. Since we started the conversation with Cement and Dangote, I went to check a few houses yesterday. And I know that the mainland and the island have different pricing. Let me give you a current reality of what houses somewhere in the Ikate axis go for. 2-bedroom apartment goes for, the cheapest I saw was 4.5 million. And the 3-bedroom apartment goes for 7 million. I'm talking rent only.
But also, are they new constructions?
Some of them are new constructions. Okay. Some of them are old, old properties, right? But we're not talking agency, agreement, legal caution. Even worse is, even the seeming new constructions, there's some that you can see that the finishing is poorly done. So what we're going to see is there's a high cost of cement. Right now, people are going to try to make ends meet by cutting corners, using substandard products. We're going to see more building collapses, unfortunately, because people would then resort to substandard products. What is the projection for the future? What hope do we have? Because the truth is, even as I was saying this and being alarmed, they were saying if you don't move now, by next year, it's going to be worse. You will not be able to afford it next year if you don't move now.
So, again, it comes back to the absence of an interventionist state. And that's the problem that we're having. And I like the example that you gave, that housing costs are getting out of control. Unfortunately, if this was any other major democracy in the world, two things would have happened. The state would have intervened. And it will not have intervened simply by clamping down on housing owners to reduce their prices. What it would simply have done was to intervene with social housing schemes. It's almost unbelievable that we live in a country today where many state governments do not understand the importance of social housing. We're not building houses. I read an interesting article where somebody said, you're living in your grandfather's house that was built by Jakonde, that you are now willing to sell, to make ends meet today. Most of the social housing was built during Jakonde and Shagari time. Governors don't build social housing again. So how are you going to bridge the supply gap in the market when government is not intervening in providing social housing or affordable, housing? There are other ways to also deal with all of these ridiculous price increases. You have rent controls in certain countries in the world where governments levy huge taxes on luxury estates and use the funding from those taxes to supply, cheap housing. Sometimes there are certain legislations that say that if you're going to erect, for instance, some of these high towers you see in Ikoyi where they stretch about 22 floors, the government is going to take 2 floors and use it for social housing and provide, cheaper rents for middle class or low income families that want to use. The problem still goes back to the fact that you lack an interventionist state without welfareist programs.
So how can we hold them to account as quickly as possible?
And also, how close are we to this quote-unquote revolt that the National Assembly, that the lower chamber seems to be concerned about?
To be honest, I just don't know how you're going to hold them to account without changing the political class. Right. Because it just appears to me that the current political class do not seem, they're so distant from the realities of the average Nigerian. And until we have a new political elite that understand the role of government in intervening, especially in times, as this, then we're always going to be grappling with, we'll keep creating unemployment and poverty, the economy keeps tanking, and it's just sad that we've lost 1 decade. Every macroeconomic fundamental points in the direction that we're going to lose another decade if things do not change fundamentally.
All right. Thank you so much, Ayo Adio. Not a lot of good and cheery news on what is looking like also a very dreary day as well.